our world, at least part of our world, is in danger. There is a chance that we might lose our independence if Putin is not stopped. He is an aggressive neighbor. He showed that and clearly has not changed his ways. So we have to do our part. There's definitely no other way around. And I don't see a lot of leaders in Europe who would be saying it like that. We're still in this either denial, naivety stage where we, kind of expect that maybe it will just pass over us or somehow will not affect us. That's no longer the case. Everybody's already affected, and it potentially can get much worse.
Tomorrow, the UK and France will host a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, the countries that would, in theory, enforce any peace deal in Ukraine. But with EU tensions with the US obviously growing, and absolutely no indication really from Russia that it's scaling back its ambitions, what can we actually expect from that? And is Europe doing enough to shoulder the burden? Well, let's bring in Gabrielius Landsbergis, until last year the Foreign Secretary of Lithuania. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm not too bad at all. Hope you're well as well. Can we talk about the meeting tomorrow? Are you in any way optimistic that something concrete might come out of it?
Well, of course, we have to wait until the results are out. But, it's been a while already, at least a couple of months that we've been waiting for some specific and concrete information coming out of those meetings. And what we've heard was that there are disagreements, that there are, different points of view how this should be handled. And unfortunately, no concrete decisions have been made yet. So maybe there is a chance of a breakthrough, but I wouldn't be that optimistic.
Lithuania will be at the meeting, will it?
I'm sure that we will be if we're invited this time, but Lithuania has mentioned the leaders of the previous government and current government that if there is a coalition of the willing that is planning to go to Ukraine to help Ukrainians defend their country, if there's future attacks on them, we will be part of that coalition because we clearly understand that it's also about us.
Now, from what I understand, at this meeting, the ones that have already been held, the UK and France are the most committed. Other countries, frankly, Italy, Germany, are just not so sure. Is that your understanding too?
Yes, indeed. Other countries are not so sure, but there's also what I mentioned, a difference in the attitude as how this has to be handled. So far, only France, at least explicitly, said that they're not going to ask for Putin's permission to deploy. And I think that this is a culprit of an issue. And this, I hope that this is being discussed from the very first moment when the people gather in the room, to discuss any of it. Because if there are those who expect Putin to allow something, or if they expect that they need to ask for permission, then it's doomed from the get-go. We have to admit that it's either we're doing this because we agreed that with Ukrainians, or we then shouldn't be doing it at all.
Because it needs to be made very clear that President Putin should not be in a position to dictate what another sovereign nation can and cannot do. And yet he does seem to be in a position where he's doing exactly that. Yeah,
exactly. Because I think that for Putin, it has always been about the spheres of influence. His attitude towards Europe, towards the countries closest to Russia, has been, of a Cold War, where he would say, okay, these countries shouldn't be in that alliance because they're closer to us, and we will have a say as how these countries run, how they defend themselves and things like that. And unfortunately, the last few months actually reinforced his belief that he's not alone in thinking that this is the right approach, that there are other leaders in the West who actually agree with this. They have the ideas of their own, as to, for example, where Canada should be, how Greenland should be run, or, where Panama should belong to. So for him, really, he believes that he has an even stronger say now than he had, some 3 months ago.
The Donald Trump administration appears to have decided that because the Russian army, even with help from North Korean forces, and as we discovered yesterday, at least a couple, perhaps more, Chinese soldiers fighting with Russia as well, has not been able to get as far even as Kyiv. So realistically, there isn't any possibility of Russia, a Russian army, threatening the Baltic states anytime soon. I wonder, is that the view in the Baltic states?
Well, there are 2 points on this. So first of all, when we're talking about any of us being able to provide security guarantees to Ukraine, we have to think that so far Ukraine has been providing security guarantees to us. Because if Ukraine would have fallen, if their leadership would have left the country, most probably Russians would be either at the gate of Europe or already through the gate. That is clear. The other thing is that looking for the future as well. I mean that when we talk about the security guarantees, whether we should be giving to Ukraine when the ceasefire is there, we have to take into account that this is where the most dangerous time when Russians will start rebuilding. This is where they start rebuilding, can start mobilizing again, and this is where they would potentially start threatening countries like my country. And for them, the goal would be to check whether alliance like NATO is still alive. And if they believe that it's not, that could reinforce their thinking that maybe it's the right time to try.
Yeah, OK. I mean, Donald Trump's administration appears to have decided, to be fair, like other previous American administrations, Obama, I think notably, that their priority should be China. They would quite like to get China to stop having quite so much influence with Russia. They'd like Russia to split away and perhaps be more friendly towards America. And then that will better serve America's own interests. Do you blame them for thinking that way?
Well, first of all, we have to be sure that they are thinking.
Oh, no, that's annoying.
If we try to see the logic behind the decisions that are made in Washington, unfortunately, nothing points in a way that there is a coherent strategy here. If we even try to imagine that there is an attempt to split Russia and China, one can only start thinking about the price that Russians would ask, to switch the partnership, that they currently have with China towards the partnership that they would build with the United States. I'm sure that they would ask the whole Europe. They would ask assistance from the United States to help them, to acquire that, that chunk of Europe. So I don't think that there are people who rationally have thought through this strategy, and it would never work. And then it comes tariffs. When we see so many countries in Indo-Pacific now being sanctioned, tariffed, slip of the tongue, but that will mean that those countries will shift closer to Chinese influence. They will trade more with China rather than with the United States. So then again, what sort of strategy is that?
So you're like a lot of people, I think, all over the world, just looking for an explanation, trying to find the logic in the American administration's collective brain.
My best guess is, and again, as anyone else, I would guess that the thinking comes from a deep notion somewhere deep inside of decision makers' mind about this, imperial world, which is run by post-liberal leaders that do not care about, the rights of the countries, the rights of the people. They only care about power, and the only thing that needs to be established: where do those countries meet? Where are the borders? So, and for that, power is required to establish those borders. I mentioned, Greenland. That explains the thinking in the United States. While Ukraine and maybe Baltics and maybe even greater chunk of Europe probably is, influence zone of Vladimir Putin. And then who knows where the line goes in Indo-Pacific, where the US interests meet Chinese. And that probably is still left to be decided in the future. For me, this worldview, this is the best guess that I would say that this explains the worldview of current administration.
Thank you for that. And can we just also draw people's attention, because people might have forgotten this, 4 American soldiers died very recently in Lithuania. Their military vehicle sank into a bog. And Lots of people, making a huge effort, helped to get the soldiers out of the bog. They wanted to pay their respects. The Lithuanian president said a formal farewell to them. But when they got back, when their bodies got back to the USA, President Trump wasn't there. He didn't bother greeting them. He went to a dinner in Florida. What did you make of that?
Here. So I will try to answer the question. I think that the thing that Lithuanian people wanted to make sure is that the people of the United States do understand how much do we value the commitment of US to defend and to be present in the Baltics, to go beyond any established norms, the way that we treat the soldiers that you would normally train. Some of them might lose their lives, but we want to go really beyond in expressing our gratitude to those young men and women who come to Lithuania and defend and are prepared to defend our country shoulder to shoulder with the troops of Lithuania and other nations. That was the main message here, and I'm happy that I think that it got through. I hope that American people who vote for either party in their elections, that they understood that and understood our appreciation and sorrow, knowing that those lives were lost.
It's just worth saying that you as a country are committed to spending, well, up to 6% of your GDP on defence. In the UK, we haven't got to 3% yet. The welfare state is hugely expensive. The NHS costs billions. How difficult is it to tell a population, look, we're just going to have to, I'm afraid, cut back on welfare spending, as an example, and pump money into the defence of our nation?
It is very difficult. It's not easy. It's a bit easier to do that in Lithuania or Poland or other countries that are on the front line rather than those who are further to the west. But the struggle is the same. People have questions. Why shouldn't we spend more on pensions or road repairs or teacher salaries or anything like that? Or why we're procuring mines and ammunition? We're building new training grounds and recruiting more troops. So in order to explain that, you have to be very open and honest with the people of your country. You have to really tell them as it is. Our world, at least part of our world, is in danger. There is a chance that we might lose our independence if Putin is not stopped. He is an aggressive neighbor. He showed that and clearly has not changed his ways. So we have to do our part. There's definitely no other way around. And I don't see a lot of leaders in Europe who would be saying it like that. We're still in this either denial, naivety stage where we, kind of expect that maybe it will just pass over us or somehow will not affect us. That's no longer the case. Everybody's already affected, and it potentially can get much worse.
Well, we'll end there. A slightly gloomy note, but thank you very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. Gabrielius Landsbergis, who was the Lithuanian Foreign Secretary.